Good day, folks, and welcome to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. Been a while since I last talked about Led Zeppelin, as far back as my 14th episode, where I covered their album Presence from 1976, which seemed to mark the beginning of the end for the band, and my 45th episode, where I covered their fourth and possibly most iconic album, mostly because it features Stairway to Heaven, and it was released without an official title. Over a year after the release of their final official studio album, In Through the Outdoor in 1979, the band chose to disband soon after the untimely passing of their drummer John Bonham. However, to cover tax demands, this album we're looking at today was produced and released as a contractual obligation, being Led Zeppelin's fifth album under the Swan Song label, including their live album, The Song Remains the Same, consisting of various tracks that were made yet never used across a good chunk of Zepp's active years, similar to Physical Graffiti. Although, according to the guitarist himself, Jimmy Page, another part of the overall reason this album came to be, in the first place, was due to the rise of unofficial bootleg recordings of the band, be they live performances or even studio outtakes. The title itself basically refers to the ending passage of a particular piece of music, so its use here is very much fitting in a way, being the last official Led Zeppelin album. So, let's jump into Led Zeppelin's 1982 album, Coda, and see for ourselves if it's a good enough album to go out on. We're gonna start with We're Gonna Groove, a cover version of a 60s song by soul and R&B singer Ben E. King. Led Zeppelin themselves were never strangers to doing interpretations to classic American blues songs, such as Muddy Waters' You Shook Me in their debut album, and Kansas Joe's and Memphis Minnie's When the Levee Breaks in their fourth album, just to name a few. This particular version was actually performed and recorded in January 1970 at the Royal Albert Hall, with some additional studio guitars dubbed over the track. Originally, this was intended to be recorded for Led Zeppelin 2, but they never got around it for some reason. The lyrics themselves are pretty simple and straightforward, with lead singer Robert Plant singing about his baby coming down the track, planning to raise a family, and of course, going to groove until the break of day. I guess you could say, let's groove tonight. As you might expect, the guitar of Jimmy Page, the bass of John Paul Jones, and the percussion of John Bonham are just as exhilarating as one should expect from an iconic hard rock band like Led Zeppelin. Plus, they made a pretty decent choice at making this the opening song of the album. It's a short and quick burst that gets its listeners pumped up, while ending soon enough to let said listeners excited and wanting for more. In the words of Ash from Evil Dead himself, Bruce Campbell, this song is groovy. Next is Poor Tom, a song first recorded in the sessions for Led Zeppelin 3. Right off from the get-go, we get endlessly hyperactive drumming from Bonham as Robert sings us a tale of Tom, a railway worker who had been doing the job for 30 years straight, and his wife, Annie Mae, who would cook his meals while he changed the wheels. Robert then refers to Tom as Seventh Son, which probably references the seventh son of a seventh son superstition, or the 50s rhythm and blues song written by Willie Dixon. Either way is likely. Both the music and the lyrics definitely have the feel of an American blues track, reflecting the working class and hard labor of the late 19th century and early 20th century, and plus not only the acoustic guitar string from Jimmy, but also near the end of the song we get this pretty nifty harmonica solo being played by Robert Plant himself, really definitely driving home that bluesy vibe. While nothing too special, This song definitely demonstrates quite well the influence of American blues music in some of Led Zeppelin's music, even in songs that they didn't exactly cover per se, but actually wrote themselves. Afterwards is I Can't Quit You Baby, another cover song, this one being based on a 50s blues tune written by Willie Dixon and originally being played by Otis Rush. Now, the band had already done and released a cover version of this track in their debut album in 1969, while this is actually a live performance, also at the Royal Albert Hall in 70, with crowd sounds being muted over. The song starts right away with Robert singing the title in an almost a cappella style before the song slams on in, a slow yet heavy blues rhythm, not unlike their rendition of Dazed and Confused. He accuses his baby of messing up his happy home and mistreating him and making him mistreat his only child. Boy, talk about gaslighting. Building up his hopes so high and yet lessening down so low. Well, what else would you have to expect from Kevin Smith's Masters of the Universe revelations? And of course, we get a fantastic solo from good old Jimmy, the core and driving force within this song, shifting around from heavy and fast to slow and soft, even going very quiet near the end of the song. You could even hear like faint static and a chucking sound or two, definitely giving it that live recording feel, before blasting out once more into a climactic riff as Robert sings once more before it culminates into a drum-rolling finish. I might discuss a bit more about the song should I get around to covering their debut album, which, knowing me, would probably be about a year or two from now. But as for this live version, it is nice. I don't think I can quit it anytime soon. Side 1 ends with Walter's Walk. Insert your Walter White from Breaking Bad joke/reference down here. This is an outtake from the sessions for Houses of the Holy in 1972, with some overdubbed vocals done as late as 1981. This is definitely one of the more underrated Led Zeppelin songs, in my opinion. I know we all love Kashmir, Immigrant Song, Communication Breakdown, and Stairway to Heaven, but this does deserve some love too. Here, Robert sings about how hard it is, feeling strange from looking out the window, trying so hard to change but never able to let go. Yeah, I know how that feels. I'm still trying to break free from my addiction to thumb sucking. Speaking of addiction, this song could likely be about obsessing over a particular woman, or even about trying to beat a drug addiction, personifying the drug itself, as if he's actually singing to it. Though, if it is about being attracted to a woman, then the line of "I know it's hard" might have a very different and very obvious meaning to it. Anyways, being written by all 4 members credited, this group effort works pretty well for what it is. While Robert's vocals and Jimmy's guitar riff may not be a whole lot for people to write home about, but Bonham's percussion remains just as distinct and thumping as it usually is. This is certainly a track that might be worth walking over for. Side 2 begins with Ozone Baby, one of 3 outtakes from the previous and last proper Led Zepp album, In Through the Outdoor, recorded at the Polish Studios in Stockholm, Sweden. I guess you might say they had a case of Stockholm Syndrome. I'll move on. This is a pretty lively track, with John Paul Jones's bass line being more prominent compared to previous songs here, melding well with Jimmy's guitar riff. In the lyrics, Robert hears you knocking on his door, not wanting you to ring his bell, since it's too late to be his honey. So instead, you're going to have to settle with Winnie the Pooh then, even when he's got a new horror film on the way. We then get to the simple chorus of, "It's my love, it's my own true love." What is his love? His girlfriend? His virginity? His love of tacos? Or maybe this was actually what Hadaway was asking about in What Is Love. In the second verse, Robert goes on to sing how he doesn't want you wasting his time, tired of you doing the things that you do, likely about trying to get rid of someone who keeps nagging and bugging him endlessly. Kind of like the little sibling who gets in the way of you trying to play an FPS game. After another guitar solo and another chorus, we get what might be the middle eight section, as Robert says he could sail a river undead and wish for a million, but he knows it's dead. Seems he didn't get the memo that the boat race got cancelled at the last minute. Then at one point near the end, he repeats "my own true love," while the pitch of his vocals get artificially shifted up and back down, as if it's skipping on a broken record. Like with the previous track, this is another underrated piece from the Zepp's discography. Next is Darlene, another one of the 3 outtakes from the sessions of In Through the Outdoor, and definitely a more rock and roll-y kind of track. Although with its 5-minute running time, this certainly has double the length of an average 50s rock and roll song. This reminds me a bit of Black Dog from the 4th album, in a good way of course, still managing to be its own thing without ending up being a carbon copy of another more popular song. And as you may imagine, Robert sings the name of Darlene over and over and over and over again, an estimated 17 times at least. He essentially tries to get the moves on this Darlene character, wanting to make her his sweet girl, as well as wanting to boogie woogie and send her to another world. A whole new world. A whole new world of restraining orders. We also not only get some brilliant riffing and soloing from Jimmy Page here, but John Paul Jones gets to play piano as well, and it really shines through here. Near the end of the song, Robert mentions that he has got a pink carnation and a pickup truck, which may likely be a direct reference to the Don McLean song American Pie. And soon enough, it all fades out altogether, yet slowly, as if the song itself could keep on going on forever. And that's something that's not exactly usual for 50s rock and roll songs, or these songs that try to replicate that kind of style. They would definitely go on a definite ending, but something like this could go on endlessly, and it's probably a good thing it actually faded out sooner than it did. After that is Bonzo's Montreux, the only track on side 2 to not be recorded in Stockholm, but rather at the Mountain Studios in Montreux, Switzerland, back in September 1976. It's basically a 4.5-minute long drum solo from John Bonham, with some electronic enhancements and harmonizations from Jimmy Page. This might honestly be one of the most unique rock songs I've ever heard, from Led Zeppelin and rock music in general. I mean, really think about it. It's nothing but the drums, and the drums alone. No guitars, no bass, no vocals, no keyboards or synthesizers, or any other instruments recorded. Just the echoing drums. And it still feels like a complete track. And that can definitely be due to both the drumming talents of Bonham himself, as well as Jimmy and his production skills. If you were to put any vocals or instruments on top of it, even if it such fits in very well, it'd be like trying to put a thick layer of icing and sprinkles on top of a perfect sponge cake. You could do it, but would you even need to anyways? And being the penultimate song in what could be debated to be Led Zeppelin's last studio album, officially or unofficially, it especially fits as John Bonham's swan song in a way, showing off and demonstrating him and his drumming at the best. It's like if the iconic drum break from the Winston song Amen Brother was its own full track entirely. Some may call it filler, while I might call it fantastic filler. We begun the album with its shortest track, and now we end it with its longest. The 5.5 minute long ballad, Wearing and Tearing. And this is quite the choice to go out on. A fast and energetic piece of rocking music. Like with Pink Floyd's Animals and Queen's News of the World, this is likely Led Zeppelin's answer to the then recent punk scene of the late 70s, to show that they can compete with the youngsters and punk bands. The lyrics themselves might also be a response to and a deconstruction of the punk rock genre and culture, with Robert saying that it starts out as a murmur, then it grows like a thunder, then it bursts inside of you. Likely referring to how both of punk's music and local content generally come in these short bursts of aggressive emotion. That or he could be singing about the chestbuster from Alien. It was the tail end of the 1970s after all. Later in the song, they say you're feeling blue, but Robert here says he just found a cure. Which I can assume probably has something to do with the juicing room from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I mean, if you're also feeling like an oversized blueberry as well. He then essentially calls out any punk fan who may dismiss Led Zeppelin as being funny fools, like fooling after school, telling them to go back to the country. Though I do hope he's not referring to legal immigrants in that case. But anyways, this is certainly a good showstopper for such an album like this, and it definitely goes out with quite a bang. And that was Coda by Led Zeppelin, and honestly, it's okay. But as the final possible hurrah for Led Zeppelin, it's nothing too special. While each of the songs are fine on their own, listening to it as a whole, you could tell it was patched together from various outtakes from various past sessions. I know Physical Graffiti had a lot of those too, but at least that had some new original material as well to balance it out and to justify its double length. And at a total of 33 minutes long, this album does definitely feel a bit pretty quick as well. Again, I know the other Zepp albums aren't exactly big long albums either, aside from Physical Graffiti of course, but they were at least at an average length of about 40 to 45 minutes. If they had another song or two somewhere in the back catalogue to fill a bit more of the time, like an extra 5 or 10 minutes or so, it probably would have helped better. That all being said though, the songs themselves here aren't at all shoddy or anything, in fact. I even actually enjoyed a lot of them. We're Gonna Groove, Walter's Walk, and Bonzo's Montreux all definitely come to mind. I don't know if it can still be found on CD, vinyl, or streaming and whatnot, but if you're lucky enough to find it in any means, give it a chance and listen, especially if you're already a big fan of Led Zeppelin and 70s rock music in general. But for anyone who have heard this album before, what do you folks think? Do you think this is good enough a send-off for one of the most iconic bands in rock history? Or do you think In Through the Outer Door went out on a better note? And what may be your favourite Led Zeppelin song and album? Let your thoughts be known down below in the comment section. Next time, it's the 100th episode of this show. And I need something really special this time. Perhaps I should go back further once more to a particular day, a day when something changed, a day when British prog rock was truly born, a day when futures passed.
Agent Schlock. What is it this time? What do you mean exactly? Ah, so the Dark Lord Gablor has already moved up and forth his plans, Well then, in such a case, find and gather up all our allies. Azol, Capricorn, Dr. X, Baron Ironblood, Yellow Lantern, the Daleks, Covenant, Rockshi, Fire Nation, all of them! We all must meet up at the Fathership with our Lord Mistress, Caesar. She'll know what to do. She always knows what to do. The time to reveal ourselves shall come again. Very soon. Over and out. An invasion has already begun. Again, Story Watcher. A new war is inevitable. So shall be our fight. My heart, mind, and soul are crystal, stronger than flesh and steel. Whatever hides from the light comes out in the dark. And I shall be the greater being of us two.